again. My name is Tim Cole, and I get to work with Waypoint Church Partners, and you're joining the Waypoint 55, which is ministry-related topics in 55 minutes or less. We started this series a little over 4 years ago to try to equip church leaders in particular areas of the church, ministry departments, ministry areas of the church, to help them get on mission and stay on mission in their area like we do with all churches. And so we have a couple a year for safety and security teams or for prayer teams, mission teams. And this one in particular is one that we'll do once or twice a year about first impressions teams or hospitality teams or whatever your church might call those. And so we are glad to have 3 presenters joining us tonight, one from each state, one from Maryland, one from Virginia, one from North Carolina. They're from 3 different size churches, and they're also from 3 different age churches, one that's less than 10 years old, one that's about 17 years old, and one that's about 24 years old. So we got a great mix with us tonight, and we're going to be hearing from these leaders about what they're experiencing and moving towards in their particular church and their context. And I think there's a lot that we could have to learn from them. And so we want to thank you for joining our webinar tonight. Let me share this screen back here. As always, we want to thank our sponsor of our webinar platform, which is Mid-Atlantic Christian University, who serves churches in our region, just like we do, trying to expand the kingdom in the Mid-Atlantic region. And they have been our ministry partner and of our platform, the sponsor of our platform since day one. I will say, for those of you who are unaware of this, that our good friend, former board of director member, Johnny Maurice, who's the president of Mid-Atlantic Christian University, his wife, Sherry, is going in for surgery tomorrow morning and for cancer that they've discovered, and they're going to find out some more as they go in. And so all the friends of the MacU world and the Maurice's world are praying this evening that that'll go really well. So when we changed our name to Waypoint 7 years ago this week, 6 years ago this week, when we were at ICOM 6 years ago, we had a byline of navigating ministry together. Waypoint is a navigational term that are the markers along a journey so that you know you're headed in the right direction. And it's like back in the old days, before we had GPSs, waypoints would be those things when you gave direction. You'd say, go down to the corner drugstore and turn right, and then go to the dead tree and turn left. And however you would give people directions. And it was those markers along the way that help you navigate your pathway. And we really feel like that's the role that Waypoint gets to play in our region with churches that are our partnering churches, is that we get to walk alongside this together and help navigate this crazy journey together. Little did we know that navigating ministry would take a serious turn here, 18, 20 months ago, as COVID-19 hit, and all churches had to really start navigating new territory. And so our webinars a lot have been focused on the new realities in particular areas. And so the title of this webinar is New Realities in On-Site First Impressions, but we've had other webinars about new realities about youth ministry and about children's ministry, about how we're doing men's ministry and women's ministry differently now. And so if you are not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, I'd encourage you to do that. There's a Waypoint 55 YouTube channel, and they are organized by playlist. You can see here of the different kinds of webinars that we might give that I described for you. So we've had a whole group of them for first impressions already that this one will be added to. And when you subscribe to that, you can also receive a notification. If you hit the little bell when you subscribe, then you receive a notification when a new webinar lands on that webinar on the YouTube channel. And so Waypoint serves churches. This map that you see right here is a map of the churches that we've served in the last 20 years with strategic services to help them get on mission and stay on mission. One of the things that we've been doing for the last 20 years is first impressions training, but we're realizing that we need to go over and completely overhaul that curriculum because things have changed a little bit. Things are still the same about first impressions generally, but there's a lot of tweaks that have to happen because things are changing as we speak about what your there's really now two kinds of first impressions. There's one is the first impressions that people are receiving about your church digitally as they visit your church. And then the next one is the first impression they have as they arrive on your property for the first time. And that's the focus that we're going to talk about tonight, is the new realities for on-site first impressions. And one of the things that have changed, or at least has been emphasized now, is that when guests come on your property for the very first time, they've been to your church, not just once, but now we're discovering through surveys that people are now, participating in your worship service at least multiple times, 2 times, 3 times, sometimes 2 months or 3 months. And we're having some people that are arriving on our properties where people are saying, yeah, I've been attending for 6 months or 9 months. And so some of the questions that would typically be answered when they come on the property have already been answered by their attendance online. And so that's a new appreciation that we have to have for the questions that are being asked when people arrive on your property for the first time. So we've got 3 great presenters here tonight with us, and I want to just go around the horn very quickly and have them introduce themselves, where they're at, the church they're at, and kind of their role at the church that helps them understand how to focus on these implications of first impressions.
Hi guys, my name is Danielle and I'm from Maryland, and I am on staff at Collective Church, and I oversee what is our Next Steps team. And for the 2 years before this past year, I led and oversaw our Connections team, which is our big old First Impressions team.
All right.
Hi, all. I'm Jen Kramer, and I go to Forefront Church. They're about 24 years old, and I have been going there for about 5-6 years or so. I help lead usher, and my professional job is recruiting and hospitality. So I've opened hotels and restaurants. And so I've brought a lot of that hospitality knowledge to my team, as far as, building that first impression, focusing on your body language, signage on, where to go, because, everyone is coming in with a different story into church. And so I help our team, be more hospitable to what we would call a first guest.
My name is Vince Butler. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm on staff at LifePoint Church. LifePoint Church was started in 2004. I've been on staff now for 5 years, and I'm our North Raleigh campus pastor, so I oversee our first impressions at our North Raleigh location.
All right. Well, one of the reasons why I've invited these presenters to be on with us tonight is because, having visited all of their churches, I love the way that their churches care about visitors. And on one of the former First Impressions webinars that I kind of presented about the 5 things that happen, the first impressions you make before Sunday morning, I talked about one of my favorite Greek words that shows up in 1 Timothy chapter 3, which is, strangely, it's about elders, but the Apostle Paul is describing to Timothy, who's a church planter, about picking some godly leaders in his church. And then he gives a kind of a profile of the characteristics of a godly leader that you should choose. And so they need to be not hot-tempered, have a good reputation in the community. They need to be faithful to their wives, manage their household well. And then we just kind of pass over this word, hospitable. And but the Greek word for hospitable is not, it's deeper than we normally think. And it's the word philoxenos. And the philo is the word like Philadelphia, it's love, the love of, like brotherly love. And then xenos is the word stranger, or someone who doesn't belong. And that godly leaders in your church are the people that love the people that don't belong at your church. When they come onto your property, they got sweaty palms as they've been driving onto the property, and they don't know anybody, and they got to pull into their parking spot. And if they got kids with them, that's a whole worry that they got there, how that's going to go. And that to find people in your church, or to instill this love in the people in your church, for those people that come on your property for the first time as strangers, and to welcome them into your church family, is really what we're talking about. It's not just a bunch of holes in a matrix that you have to do in your volunteer matrix, and then you're set for Sunday morning, but it's having a whole team of people that see the visitors through their eyes and the emotions that they're experiencing as they're walking or driving on your campus. And so I've experienced that at all three of these churches, of the job that these three churches do, and having a great team that really goes the extra mile in trying to be in that role. So I want to dive right in and talking about that reality of the fact that the average first-time on-site visitor at your church likely has already attended your church service multiple times. Even before COVID, there was a survey that surprisingly showed how many people had watched a sermon at a church before they showed up. And it was surprising pre-COVID how many churches, large churches, still only had audio of their sermon on their websites. And that we were always encouraging churches to make sure you've got good sermons parked on your website, because your first time visitors will go see that, at least a part of it, before they come on site. But now we know, I can't imagine hardly any visitor, unless they're brought with a friend, completely blind date, but a friend brings them. I can't imagine a visitor attending your service without taking a peek at your worship service at least once before they arrive. And so understanding that, I'm curious for the three of you, and we could go around the horn right now in a similar order, and then we may change the order. But what are some of the ways that you think those people arriving for the first time on campus, that your first impressions are changing for them? And at least what they're seeing, what you're focusing on, what they're feeling or afraid of. How do you feel about that?
I think that they're coming in with, whatever they're bringing in their heart and in their mind and their soul. And then they're also coming with kind of a set of expectations. Like, this is what I've seen from the website. I've seen this worship service. I think I know where the nursery is, or I think I know, what they do or how long the service is. But I think they have a certain expectation, as if you were walking into a hotel or a restaurant. What is this going to feel like? What am I going to get out of this today? And I think that there is a level that you have to set when somebody walks in, because they already know a little bit about you. They already know a little bit about, what you offer or what services you offer or who you donate to. So I always have to think in the back of my mind, like, what kind of expectation has this person already set, or this preconceived notion? Because everyone has a preconceived notion about Christianity and the church in general. They had a bad run in, and so now they're going to give it another try, or they, just came to faith, or they're like, having a rough time in their marriage, and they're like, I think I need Jesus today. So you don't know what they're walking in with, but I always think about maybe that expectation that they might have now.
All right, that's great input there. Just thinking through that. Danielle or Vince, what would you think about how things are changing now that people have probably seen your church a little bit more than they used to, but how's that still impact first impressions now?
I'll go. I think people, like Jen was saying, they still come with those expectations, but at least now they're coming knowing, like, I think I do like what the pastor's talking about. I can get behind that. I like the feel of this music. I can get behind that. But they're still coming with the worries of, like, where the heck am I going to park? How am I going to check in my kids? Is there going to be coffee? Are they going to scan my forehead when I get there? Do I have to wear a mask?
Mhm.
So, like, there's like a whole other layer of the expectations of that they already have of church. Like, I expect the music to be nice, and I expect the teaching to be sound, but how are the people going to make me feel when I get there? And I think that's where the first impressions team is so important. And on our church at Collective, it starts with our parking team, and they are like our first layer. They are like they're my favorite people, because one, they're out there with all of the different weather issues that there can be, but they are there to help people figure out not just where to park, but to, like, see people and to acknowledge people and make the eye contact before they ever come in. So I think that is, I don't know if people expect that when they come to church. And so, like, that's that little extra love and, like, seeing that you were talking
Mhm.
about before with the Greek lesson, that I think people don't expect, but, like, inside they're desiring that.
Yeah. When we do our first impressions training, we try to call our parking
Oh, yeah.
team. We don't call them parking team. We call them first smiles. And because they literally are. And sometimes you drive on a property, even if they have anybody in the parking lot, they're not smiling, and it's creating a first impression. And we think the first impression starts once they've gotten inside the door. And I know Vince's church it's got a great parking team, and they're way out in the parking lot, not just kind of near the door, and set a first impression early on. So Vince, I'm curious why you're thinking about kind of the expectations people have in their minds as they're coming on the property for you guys at LifePoint.
One of the things that we say a lot around our team is just the sermon starts in the parking lot. So a cool thing that we've done recently with the parking team is, it was actually one of the guys who's been on our team for a while. He started adding things. So he wanted to get Hulk hands for the parking team, because he noticed when kids came in, they wanted to like see someone who was smiling, having fun, engaging families. And I've loved that. And I will say one of the things that I have noticed is with the expectations is just being out at our welcome tent where we have for first time guests. I've heard a lot of people come in that had attended online that will say things like, "Oh, wow, you look familiar. I've seen you preach a message, or I've seen you do the online announcements," but then their questions, just like Danielle and Jennifer were saying, they were asking things like, okay, when I go in the building, where do I go? What does it look like? Is there a safety team in the kids area? They were asking questions about their on-campus experience. But the nice thing is them also knowing, like, once again, they've heard the message, they've seen the worship, and it's been really cool for them to be able to see, like, oh, I've seen that worship leader before. I feel like I've connected with him at home by watching on a screen or whatnot. So it's been great to be able to have online services, but I am noticing those questions are more similar things like, how are you cleaning your auditorium? Where do first-time guests park? And just a lot of different expectations coming on to the actual location. So
Yeah, that's something I would say that I've seen in all three of your churches, is that you've got not just a parking team for smiles, but you've got a greeting team as well outside the doors. And that's something in our training that we recommend all churches do, because if you can put yourself through the emotions of being a first-time visitor, and once you walk through those doors, you're now pot committed, that you're there for an hour, whether you like it or not, even if the people are creepy and whatever. And so to allay those fears with some friendly people out on the sidewalk or out on the patio or wherever, a tent that says welcome guests or whatever, is they get to see that from 50 yards away. And as they're walking up, they're taking a deep breath, because there's some normal looking friendly people there even before they've gotten into the front door. Because once they open that front door, now they're in, and it's going to be hard to get away after that. And they know that. And so your three churches do a great job of they've seen online what your worship service, but mostly they've seen your stage up to this point. And it's interesting to me, as I get to visit a different church nearly every Sunday, sometimes there's a big disparity between what I watched online with a beautiful stage, and then you get there and the church is different. It's a disconnect culturally. And so they're coming on site with expectations of what they've seen on stage. What they have seen on stage is going to be what your church really is really like. So that's great. Well, we hinted at this already, but I'm curious what you guys are doing physically about cleaning your sanctuaries, and because that's a new expectation, and that some small percentage pre-COVID, like my wife, who's a germaphobe, she saw all the cleanliness things, but I'm on the other end of the spectrum. But now there's a new expectation for what you're doing, and so I'm curious what your churches have done, not only to be cleanly, more disinfected at your building, but what you're doing to let people see that you're doing that, so that those new expectations are satisfied.
I'll start. One, we tried really hard not to be gross before and to already have, some cleanliness standards. So before the pandemic, we were actually, we were portable. We were in a middle school, which, if you think about it, is actually kind of gross in itself. But we were really lucky to have a custodian that was there on Sunday mornings. And for the most part, this one woman, and she was the best. But once we moved into our new space, we realized, wow, we don't have a custodian anymore. So we developed a facilities team, which It's not just like facilities, because they are also people that get to see people, which is really nice, because we want like any team members that are out in the lobby or in the parking lot, whether they're cleaning something or, holding a door open, to feel like they can talk to people and see people. But our facilities team, in between services, and even some of our kids team members who are like on the check-in team, we're wiping down doors in between services to like remove little kid handprints and anything that's smudgy. So we try to keep a very like clean and minimal type lobby, to like show the brain like, hey, this is a safe space. It is safe for you to bring your family in. We have signage before people even walk inside to let them know that masks are optional. So that way and there's also like no judgment at Collective, like wear your mask, don't wear your mask, like live to, what's comfortable for you. And we also implemented like hand sanitizing stations that are, at different locations in our lobby and the familiar areas that people will engage in.
All right. Vince or
Forefront has a
Jen?
little, yeah, Forefront has about the same as that, where we have the hand sanitizing stations. We have the, people that are cleaning, that come in and volunteer, and they clean or wipe down all of the door handles before service, which kind of makes you think how many times you touched that door handle before we did that in between every service. And even I think about it now, I'm like, oh, don't touch your face because you just touched the door handle. Like, okay, like this is how germs are now. But when, we started to open back up, they had all the seats, and then they had where you could come in and reserve seats. So all the seats were spaced apart. And then once all the restrictions lifted in Virginia, was wear a mask, don't wear a mask, whatever feels good for you, that's fine. We still love you and want you to come in and check us out. And then we also do like the communion, where it's the to go.
Yeah.
And so when I am the one that's handing out communion, I kind of like, they give you, people who are new or people who are not new or new, they give you a social cue. So as part of my job is to follow their social cue, because when a stranger comes in, I just want to welcome them in. So whatever you want to do is like good for me, whatever, like I don't want to put my own feelings on you. I want to just like meet you where you're at. So like you'll see, like sometimes they'll put their hand out, or like they'll take it from my hand. It's all about like whatever is comfortable for them to make them feel welcome. But we have it in like the little to-go cups.
Yeah. Vince, anything added to that you guys are doing around your building?
Yeah, so we also have hand sanitizer stations throughout the building. We added bottles of hand sanitizer on all of our tables in our lobby, and then any like cafe counters. And then one thing we started doing as well is we keep all of our doors propped open. So our doors to our auditorium are propped open. We have 2 double set of doors to go through, and both of those are kept prop open. The greeters open those and then end up closing those, so people don't have to worry about touching those as they go in. And we added, we have our building cleaned twice a week now. And then another thing that we had added to our North Raleigh facility was that, a new air filtration system with our HVAC. So we've had some people ask some questions about that. But we've also really tried to, so we pass out Connect cards at the door, but then we also have a stack of Connect cards in a holder next to the auditorium door for people that want to grab them and don't want them handed out to them. And so we're trying, for both people that are nervous to touch things still, and other ones that are fine with just grabbing them from the greeters. But I would say definitely adding the hand sanitizer all throughout the building has been a big thing.
I'm seeing a lot more churches, making QR codes available for things that normally would be print, so people don't have to touch anything that anybody else is touching if they don't want to. One thing that I've been encouraging for churches, and for every church this will play out differently, is we're doing a lot of cleaning during the week for Sunday, but I like personally to let our cleaners be seen on Sunday in between services. I like that in the store. When I'm going around the store and I see someone wiping stuff down while I'm a patron of the store, that is a first impressions that they're trying to keep their store clean. And the same is true of a church. I was preaching at a church recently, And because of the restrictions on capacity, there were like 4 services. And there was a guy at this point that they had the little mister that was going and misting down all the chairs between the services. And he was waiting up on the stage while everybody left. And he asked me, is it okay to go? And I'm like, don't wait. I want the next hour to see the fact that their chairs have been misted between services. That's a good thing. And so whatever it is for your church, I think it's a healthy thing for first impressions as people come into your property. If they see your workers, don't do that on Saturday or on Tuesday. Go ahead and do it on Sunday as well. The other thing I would advise would be early on once we started reopening our buildings, lots of churches created a little 2-3 minute video of all the cleaning protocols they were going to start doing. And some of them were very simple. It's the preacher walking around with an iPhone. Some of them were more produced, but regardless, that was a year ago. And I think that should be a new expectation on your website or pinned to the top of your videos of your Facebook page, is because there's a much greater population of people that want to know before they arrive, is this church taking that seriously? And so to have a little click here to see our cleaning protocols, and there's a little 2-minute video that shows here's what we do. And it may not be more than any other church does that they might want to visit, but the fact that you've got it in a video makes them feel more comfortable about visiting your church versus the next one down the road that doesn't tell them. The next church down the road might be doing way more than you are, but they're not going to communicate. And it's all about the first impressions. So your churches do a great job with all of that and make people feel really comfortable about that. I would like to get into a little bit about how training is going to change now with first impressions, recruiting and training. And Jen alluded to this a little bit. First of all, we've discovered that recruiting any ministry team has gotten really hard post-COVID, whether it's children's or worship or first impressions. And so how's that going for you? But the content of your training, and I would be very guilty of this because I don't think, Jen, like you do. I like to go shake people's hands right away and make them feel warmly welcomed. And that's what we've been telling people. Without going too far, you always want to be the one to do that. And early on in COVID, I went to visit a church, and there was an elder that was about the only guy I knew at this church, but we've been friends a long time. And he came in, and he was an elderly gentleman. And I went up to shake his hand real quick, and he jumped back like Michael Jordan, like, 10 feet in the air. And it made me for the first time realize, oh, there's people that don't want to shake my hand anymore. And it was a complete new mentality for me. And I had to train myself to gauge where they were versus where I wanted to be. And so I'm curious for you all, how that's affecting your recruiting and your training, or at least your plans moving forward for your recruiting and training for your first impressions teams.
Yeah, so for us, our first impressions team, I will say, I think for everybody here as well, coming back when we reopened our building, it's been hard to get people back on volunteer teams, like you were saying. And I know with our first impressions team, we have a lady who oversees that. She's our volunteer team lead. And she does a great job just thinking through, right when we first reopened, I sat down with her and she started talking to me through some of those things, because I was someone initially that would be like, trying to shake someone's hand and go out and greet them. And she did a great job of just saying to me, like, hey, we've got to think through this. We got to think, if they want to shake our hand, they'll put their hand out. Really pay attention to how they're feeling as they come up to the tent. One, because it could be their first time there, or two, it could be, their first time back since COVID, and they have all these things going through their minds. And she's done a great job at training our teams. We actually set them up once a month now, where she helps train the teams. And people are wanting to stick around and talk with you. Do you feel like, people are wanting to sit there and shake your hand? Like, what are you noticing from people that are coming in? How can we make this better? And so she's done a great job at thinking through how people feel when they come in, and how we could have people that are really ready and excited to come back, and then some people that are nervous to come back. So getting to sit down and talk with her and to talk through some of this has been very helpful for myself. And she's just done a great job at, like I said, meeting with the other volunteers and the teams and trying to help recruit new people. And she's actually, I know, has been recruiting some people that are coming to our building for the first time, which has been really cool in that process to see that. So it's been awesome to be able to sit with her and just kind of, walk through that and see how we can be the best as a team overall to make sure everyone feels comfortable and feels safe as they're coming.
All right. Jen.
Yeah, so we, as far as training goes and recruiting, we have been struggling to get people to come and volunteer. And I think, there's some, filling your schedule and filling your time. And for me, there's like this thing that they call with them. What's in it for me? And so anyone that's coming to volunteer, yes, they're benevolent, they want to volunteer, they want to help, but they want to know what the time commitment is. So like, I think our church could definitely do a little bit more to improve on like how much time am I going to be spending doing this? Because even me, I love to volunteer. I will talk to a tree if it talks back. But when I went to volunteer, I was like, is this like a forever thing? Like, do I have to sign up my name for life to volunteer? Am I going to like it? Who am I going to work with? How long do I have to stay after service? Because I have little ones. So, maybe setting the stage for what that recruitment process could look like. And as far as training goes, so there's this hospitality. Have you heard of the 10-5 rule or 10-6 rule?
I don't think so.
Anyone heard? So there's a 10-5 rule in hospitality. So what it means is when someone's 10 feet away from you, you make eye contact with them. And so you smile, make eye contact. When someone's about 5 feet away, that's when you'll acknowledge them and say, good morning, good afternoon. And so I taught our team that whole hospitality trick of like, hey, we don't have to just kind of like smile and let people, interact with us if they want to. It's more of just if they're 10 feet away, we smile and interact, smile, are engaging. And then when they're 5 feet, you say, hi, good morning. And it doesn't even have to be any more complicated than that, because some people don't want to talk to you at all, especially if they're very introverted. But we've used that tactic, and then we've called it, 10-6, because 10, 6 feet apart kind of thing. So I train my team on that, so that way, they don't feel like they have to shake hands. Because when people come in, if you're greeting and opening the door for someone, they're usually holding coffee, or they're usually holding something because they're a little bit nervous anyway. So they may not want to shake your hand, but at least giving a greeting or a warm, hi, especially if you're wearing a mask, the body language kind of makes a huge impact on
that. I'll chime in. So Collective has always been a church for introverts. We try to design everything we do from the mindset of an introvert. And believe it or not, I may oversee first impressions, but I am very introverted. I like to call myself an extroverted introvert. So anything that we do, we try to do it from the mindset of like, what would somebody, the reason we do this because extroverts, they're comfortable wherever they go. They don't care. They'll shake your hand. They'll go walk and find the coffee. They'll go right into the bathroom. It doesn't matter to them. But one thing that we've changed for getting volunteers across the board is we've implemented like a no strings attached shadow day. So we've tried to, like with Netflix and other things, you get that 7-day free trial where it's like no strings attached. I can like not pay for this after this if I didn't like it. And we've seen like a lot of retention from that. And it gives people the chance to, maybe they're interested in kids and they come in, they're like, oh, nope, definitely not. But they still want to be involved with kids. And so then they got to also see our kids check-in and connections team. And they're like, oh, that's the right fit for me. So I would suggest that.
That's a great tip right there. So if they forget to opt out after the first week, are they in for life like it is with Netflix?
No. So then it's on, staff to have that conversation afterwards. Like, hey, what did you think? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Like, do you want to try something else? I can connect you with another staff member. So it just gives like another layer of communication and another chance to talk about those expectations. Like, hey, if you have a child, like you can take off time and like, take your time. If like life happens, if you get a job where you have to work twice a month, like we ask people to serve 50% of their Sundays. So.
All right. Well, I want to remind our folks that there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you've got any questions about the conversation so far, we want to invite you to go ahead and hit the Q&A button, ask the question. I don't see, well, I haven't opened my thing yet. So there's one question there. Great question. This is a first impressions team. I question, but it interfaces with the safety and security team. So we're going to get to this in a second, but let me, this is a slight application to where we're at, but how has your next steps process changed with first impressions? Because normally it's like, hey, come, come back to the back and greet the preacher, or come back to this, whatever. And I think now with the 10-6 rule, not the 10-5 rule or whatever, as people are a little bit more distant, how are you amending, if any way, kind of their next steps, take 5 afterwards, or whatever, anything like that you would recommend for us?
Yeah, one thing for us, so we've done something called our Try 5 challenge for a few years now, where we, with our first time guests, we ask them to come try us 5 times, because we know, when you go to a church the first time, it's hard to know if that's the place you want to call home. And so one thing that we have done with that is we've implemented that online as well. So we've seen people, that's all part of our next steps process. So we've actually seen people who have attended online maybe 3 times, and they were in Try 3, then they came to our facility on Try 4. And so our processes all go together. So when they come into our building, they're automatically on Try 4 with us. And so those 5 steps stays the same for those next steps. And so we have different things throughout them. So the first one is like a campus pastor or lead pastor connect. So when you're on a Try 1, normally I'll do a video, give you a call, or send you an email, just thanking you for coming to the church and encouraging you to take this Try 5 challenge. And then throughout those 5 times, we have a different point of contact throughout them all. And then by the 5th time, we're encouraging you to jump into a serving team, where we connect you with all the different teams that we have, and then our team leaders in those areas. But one thing I've loved is just seeing how the processes work really well together, like seeing someone start online and come into the building. And we already know if they come and they let us know, hey, I've been attending online 3 times now, today's my Try 4. We've heard some of that language, which has been awesome to see people through that. And then they're right in with our next steps that we've had. So they completely match online and in person, which has been awesome.
That's great. I think that's a big shift in our first impressions mentality. Now that we're out of COVID, as pre-COVID, I think we would have counted all of their visits online as kind of pre-visits. But the clock starts the first time they worship with us, regardless of whether it's on site or via video. And so I love that when they arrive on site, it's their 4th visit or wherever. That's really good. Jen or Danielle, any other thoughts about kind of your decisioning pathway or your next step pathway changing at all because of this?
I can't really speak to Forefront and their whole next step path, because I stay more in the first impression piece of it and the recruiting piece of that. But I know, there's always a call to action, and in sales and marketing, recruiting, you always have to have a call to action. So Forefront Church is really good about having a call to action, whether it's baptism, whether it's serving, and they give a lot of options, and they make it really clear, hey, if this is what you're looking for. And they have pastors that are outside after service, if you want to chat. So it's for the introverts, right? A little bit more personable, a little bit more one-on-one, because sometimes that is nerve-wracking to be like, all right, I'm just going to go up and say hi to the pastor now. Some people may not do that. It may take them 6 times of seeing that person in person to be able to approach them. So there's always a call to action, but I think it's just based on every person and where they're at. And our motto is, people helping people to find and follow Jesus, which and the mission is to go towards the unchurched people. So making them feel at home, giving them calls to action. They're convicted on their own to kind of make that next step. That's basically what I've seen Forefront do. I like this. I like the Try 5 though. That's cool, where you hear it in after service. That's great.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great principle. I think it was Danielle that brought it up, is that there's a lot of churches that fall into the temptation of designing their first impressions for extroverts. And, but they're going to they're going to walk in and shake hands, and they don't need a first impressions plan, or at least a first time visitors plan, because they're going to walk in and they're talking to people in the hallway or in the parking lot. So to think about your first impressions, whether it's pre-COVID or post-COVID, doesn't matter, through the eyes of an introvert is a pretty good principle. It's surprising to me how many preachers are introverted, even though they are seemingly in an extroverted profession. And so and that's why they're so worn out on Sunday morning, because they've had to pretend like they're extroverted for an hour or two or three. And then we go home and are wiped out from being out of our comfort zone for that time. But we still love people. The philoxenos of the love of the stranger is strong for pastors, but visitors are the same way. As there's a lot of angst about having to come into this building with people they don't know and walk through a lobby of strangers and get to a place, and the way someone referred to Jen, make sure your wayfinding is good. I would say that one of the things I would say for your first impressions, now wherever we are post-COVID, one of the services that Waypoint provides to our partner churches is a secret shopper service, where we come and we take a lot of notes on our phone, it looks like we're taking notes for the sermon, but take a lot of notes of what we see through the eyes of a visitor. And so to try and help your first impressions team see really positive, constructive criticism. So anybody that's watching online tonight or on our YouTube channel after the fact, if we could serve your church in that way by visiting on a Sunday and letting you know what we saw in the parking lot or what we saw standing in line to check in our kids, might be very helpful to you. All right. We've got a couple questions here that I think are both good. The first one, Daniel Roach gave us about any thoughts about how visible your security team should be. So I don't know how, I've got my opinion on that. And if there's any other questions that anybody would like to chime in, now's the time. But that's Daniel's questions. I don't know if any of you have an opinion on that.
I mean, I'm not sure. Right now, each Sunday we have one security, and then we have one medical, and they're partners in themselves. And so they're always present in the lobby, and they're designated with a background checked lanyard. Anyone that's just coming to Collective wouldn't know who they are, but they're in our lobby. They have the background check lanyard. Our team knows who they are, but if a guest came, they wouldn't be able to point them out. In my opinion, I think that's a good thing, because they're a secret shopper in a way, but a secret safety person.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so our security safety team, they're in the lobby and visible as well. We have a few that stay by our kids area check in, and some that are on the adult ministry side by the auditorium. They do wear red shirts currently, so everyone's on the safety team has a red shirt on, so it is visible. They don't say safety on them, but their team wears red because we have different volunteers teams wearing different colors, but they are visible in the lobby in both areas.
Yeah, I would say the same thing in the church that I attend, my family attends, even though I'm rarely there, just about once a quarter, but they've got a pretty robust safety and security team. And for me, it's half and half, is that I think it's good to let people know that you do have security there and safety in mind. I like the word safety better than security, because security means it might be insecure, but so I like the word safety team. And they've got shirts that identify them as such. And then we've also got a different shirt of a medical volunteer or something. I can't remember what it is. And they walk around and they got a big guy at the entrance to the children's area that's got a safety team shirt on. And so just his presence there knows that there's somebody there. But then there's also a couple of people walking around that are like your air marshals that you don't know, and out in the parking lot. And when they first established the parking lot person, they kind of parked up on a little hill next to the parking lot, and someone called the cops because there was a guy watching people walk in the church that he's sitting in his car up on this hill, and it was our safety guy. But so he was not being too incognito, so they had to fix that. But I think there's a little bit of both can be good. I think people anymore, it's kind of going above and beyond. as far as what they expect is a good thing. And that's, I know Danielle, we want to jump on that a little bit, is we've talked about meeting their expectations at this point, but I'm curious any ways that you guys have thought about going above expectations to say, we're not just taking it to where you want to be, but even the next step higher. And so Danielle, if you'd like to chime in on ways you guys are trying to do that, that'd be great. And then Jen or Vince might be able to chime in as well.
Sure. So in addition to us copying Netflix, we are copying Disney Plus. So we wanted to add in like an extra special thing that people don't expect when they go to church. So when they come to church, they expect sound teaching, they expect hopefully decent music. Parents want a safe environment for their kids to be in. But what they don't expect is what we call our collective plus. And so I genuinely believe we've seen like a huge increase in our attendance over the past 2 months from the things that we've done, from birthday cupcakes on our birthday in September to hot cider this past weekend. We did t-shirts a couple weeks ago. We've also done donuts. We did, you guys can steal this because people loved it. We did ice cream floats, and it was like this perfect amount of like nostalgia, and like people loved it. It was like the best thing ever. But it's just like that extra little thing where in a way we're creating FOMO, where people are kind of like, man, I should have been there. And it really is that, because we're not giving it to you the next week. If you weren't there, you weren't there. Kind of sucks to suck, but we're trying to create a church where, like, an experience where like, man, I shouldn't and I don't want to miss church. And it's also like one more touch point for our first impressions, our connections team, to interact with people before they leave and to have people end on that high note.
All right, that's great. Any other for Jen? I saw recently a donut wall where it was like a pegboard with just little pegs on it and a donut on every peg, and as you walked out you could get a donut, and that was pretty. But they announced it the week before, you got to come next week because it's a particular kind of donuts for that town. And so it was kind of like, ooh, I better be here next week. Any other thoughts, Vince or Jen, on that one? Kind of read this next question here.
Yeah. So we're doing something called Sunday Fun Day. Something that we really are big in our church is just the community. And we knew that for a long time we were missing that, when we were solely online. We tried a few different things to be able to create that. But when we reopened our facility, once a month now, we do something called Sunday Fun Day, where the first Sunday of every month, we make it kind of like a theme. So it's funny you said about the root beer floats. I love that idea. We might have to end up using that one. We last month, we did one where we actually purchased little mini pies, and we had a tent set up outside. And so everyone that came out of service was able to get their own individual mini pie, and they were able to sit outside with a fork and just kind of hang out outside by our parking lot to get to meet other people in the church. And so we've done those now for the last, I guess, 8 months. And it's been awesome to see. Our kids ministry team jumps in as well. So they'll do something fun, like have kids dress up that day. Like in December, we're going to do one where it's going to be like a hot chocolate bar outside, so people can go outside and grab a cup of hot chocolate. And we just, and from the stage, encourage, hey, go outside, meet other people. If it's your first time here, we'd love for you just to connect with staff and hang out. So I do know, like, when we end up like posting some of that, I think some people are like, oh, I'd like to be a part of that. So we've seen people come, and that's kind of getting into our DNA and our language, where people are excited about Sunday Fun Day. Like, oh, I can't wait till next month. So that's been a really cool thing we've done as a church. We'll see as the weather gets colder how we're going to accomplish that, but so far it's worked really well.
During COVID, Forefront would have all of these different holiday drive-throughs. So, for Easter, they had this huge, bucket of things, and then you could come out of your car and take a picture, and, everything was socially distanced, and they did this big drive-through. And then right before school started, they did where they had a big ice cream truck come. And so like, I'm like a 5-year-old, I'm like, oh my gosh, Snickers ice cream bar, yes. But all the kids could get together, and, you followed those social cues again. Some people would want to kind of stay off in their own little area, and then others, weren't afraid of the germs, weren't afraid of the COVID feelings, and then they would get together. So it was just more of meeting people where they're at. I don't really know what their plans are, going forward for all of those things, as far as, setting those expectations or going above the expectation. But I think we're just trying to hit home on the fact that when people, come in, it's just, you want to make them feel welcome and at home right away. It's like that first impression, that first, like, you're safe, you're cool, come on in, get some coffee, sit down, and then, it will let them open up long enough to be able to listen to, what Pastor Jason has to say.
Yeah, well, our time is just about up. But speaking about coffee, I'm a big time coffee drinker, so I'm very curious to see how churches reopen their coffee. Most churches are starting to do that, but I was surprised how slowly coffee, because hands are everywhere on coffee, but churches are really doing a good job of trying to figure out whether they're wearing plastic gloves, the volunteers. I've seen a lot where the volunteers are the only ones that with gloves on and then hand it, but so everybody in touching the carafe or things. But to go through and think about how can we still be as hospitable as we've ever been, even trying to be sensitive to the new realities that we've got for people being sensitive to germs and things like that. Well, I want to thank our guests or our panelists for being on with us. There's been some really great nuggets today about how you can, it's really more a mentality than for your church. Every church is a little bit different, but it's a mentality of what can we do here? And it's really conversations that you need to have among your leaders for what's going to work for us. And we can't go back to what we were doing before, but we can't be unwise about the things we start moving forward. And so in a conversation among your team and your leaders, how can you A, meet expectations, but then B, even exceed expectations in a way that people know that you are going out of your way to make them feel comfortable and safe and clean as they come on your property for the first time. And so let me tell you about a couple things. I've shared the screen here. There's a couple other ways. Well, I'll hit this one first. Not only via webinar, but we've got a podcast that started this year every other week with leaders around the Waypoint region. Dyke McCord and Becca Hott on our staff are the ones that do that. And so would love for you to go to our webpage and click on the podcast to subscribe to that. And there's some great leaders from around our region only. We're not going outside of Virginia. We're in North Carolina, Maryland, and actually, I know that Michael Bartlett just got interviewed for this, so he's coming soon from Danielle's church to learn some great things from each of those. And then just very recently, we launched our Pastor's Wife podcast that's getting really warm reviews about supporting, encouraging pastors' wives and the unique role that they have in their church. And so for those that are listening, either currently online or will watch this later, we also invite you to go to the podcast button on our website, waypointchurchpartners.com, and subscribe to that, or at least recommend that your preacher's wife might listen to that on any of the podcast platforms that are out there. So we want to thank you for your time tonight. Our presenters have been great. Vince is already gone. He's on vacation and was actually on from a bounce house. And so I don't know how he found a quiet spot. Danielle and Jen have been with us at home. So ladies, thanks for joining us tonight. And as always, we are here to help you and your church navigate ministry together. We're in uncharted waters, and we are, creating a pathway that's brand new. And so if Waypoint can help your church navigate that, that's what we're here for. And we'd love to hear from you on how we might be able to help you do that. So have a great evening, everybody.